This episode is brought to you in part by the Needle Cuda Law Firm, guidance that moves lives forward.
Welcome to another episode of Divorce Doesn't Suck. I'm Wendy Sloan, and I'm here with my co-host, Daniel Herrold. Daniel, how are you today?
I am great. How's life for you?
Life is good. I feel like every week on this podcast, I learn something. I've been through it all, and I learn something new every single time.
Yeah, and I love the stories. And, that was something that when we talked about setting this up so many months ago, we really wanted to tell the stories. And so I love blending in, the everyday stories, and also just how people came to serve the divorce industry is really cool. A lot of it is based on their own experiences, but then blending in the expertise, because what we've seen with our audience is we've got so many people that are either contemplating a divorce, they're about to go into the divorce process, and this is great, useful information for those people. I wish I had it when I came in, so I love it.
You and I say that all the time. We both wish we had that because there was no platform, there was nowhere for me to go, nowhere for me to understand the process. And I keep saying, gosh, if I had only known that then, I would have been in a lot better situation. So we're learning so much. And I have to say, we're making so many friends. Everybody is so kind and wants to give back in this industry this community that we're creating. It's really unbelievable. And today, we're back with our third of our 12-part series, Mapping Your New Path Forward. And I think that just that tagline alone says it. We're mapping our new path forward because we're going to have new beginnings and new journeys and new happy ever after. So attorney Melissa Needle, partner at the Westport, Connecticut-based law firm, and our sponsor and one of the dearest people I know is back. Welcome back, Melissa.
Thank you, Wendy. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning.
Well,
you've brought so much to this podcast already, Melissa, and today we're going to be talking about something that's so important, getting started with your attorney, because if you don't have the right attorney to start off with, that's the biggest problem. I think this is one of the most important things, is finding the right attorney, which we've talked about.
Yeah, I will agree with that. I often tell people that you're going to get very close with your divorce lawyer, and you really have to make certain there's a right fit, both in terms of the substance and the facts that are involved in your divorce. But on top of that, there has to be some sort of emotional connection. You have to be able to work with this person. You have to have confidence and faith in their abilities to give you the right guidance.
And getting started with your attorney doesn't mean that it could be you're getting started with your second attorney, you're getting started at a certain time in the process. It doesn't have to, you're not going to talk necessarily about this is the first time you're going through this, because you could be we don't know what phase you're at in the divorce.
Yeah. So there are lots of people that hire lawyers just to get information. They may be thinking about getting a divorce. They want to understand what the substance of the law is, what the process will be, so that they can put their situation in context and make some informed decisions about whether or not it's a path they want to travel or not. Then there's people who have decided that they want to get divorced, and at the beginning of the process, they'll interview a bunch of lawyers and hire the one that they have the most confidence in. And then there's post-judgment issues as well. So you could have completed your divorce and gone through the journey with one lawyer, maybe not be satisfied, maybe that lawyer's retired, many, many different reasons, and you are going to hire a lawyer to help you with your post-judgment issues as well.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a situation where you're traveling on this path, you have a divorce lawyer, and then you realize that it's not a good fit for whatever reason. And you might switch lawyers during the pendency of your action. That happens quite a bit. But it is one of the most critical aspects to make sure that your divorce is successful and that you feel satisfied at the conclusion of it. You need to know that you were well represented.
Especially because the process is so overwhelming. It's one of the greatest upheavals we will ever experience if you're going through this. It's not easy at any stage.
That's true. And that's why the emotional connection and having confidence and faith in your lawyer is so critical, because you're debilitated emotionally during this process, and rightly so. Like you said, the upheaval of your family is it's hard. It's hard to maneuver, and it's scary. You don't know what's coming next. So you want to have the guidance of a lawyer that you really have faith and confidence in.
How
Melissa, I want to
important?
go.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I want to start. I was thinking through the process that we've gone through just in our conversations. What is a divorce? The first one, which I love, was how to hire an attorney. And, most people, I would say, generally speaking, that are engaging an attorney in the divorce process are probably interfacing with an attorney for the very first time. So they don't understand a lot of the lingo, the process. Walk us through. Let's assume that you just got to have a lay person that has interviewed you. They really feel comfortable with you, and they come in or they call and say, I'm ready to hire you to start the process. What happens then? Is there paperwork that's signed? Are they required to give you a certain amount of money up front? Walk us through kind of the process for the lay person that doesn't know what the next steps are.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Daniel, because there's so many people that want to be divorced and they've never interfaced at all with a lawyer in the past. So in terms of a divorce, the first thing you have to do once you identify the lawyer that you want to represent you is you have to sign a retainer agreement. And the retainer agreement is basically a letter that indicates the terms of their representation of you. And that basically tells you how much per hour everyone in the office will charge to work on your file. It tells you a little bit about the costs and expenses. It tells you what happens with regard to your retainer in the event the case concludes before the retainer is used, or what happens when the retainer reaches a certain level. And professionally, lawyers are required to have a retainer agreement before they commence representing someone. And I always like to take time and explain in regular language what is in the retainer agreement. And I always say to the people that I'm representing that we are going to get very close. We're talking about very emotional, important, private issues. And I want them to feel comfortable if there's something with regard to our contractual relationships, such as fees, that they're uncomfortable with, or they don't understand, or they can't commit to. I want them to have a level of comfort so that they can talk to me. And the reason I do that is, and I say this every time I'm on your podcast, is this divorce is happening to the client. It's not happening to me. And they need to feel satisfied at the end. And in order for them to feel satisfied, they need to be engaged and they need to understand what's happening. And that is including the fees and the costs associated with this divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So we go through the retainer letter, and once the retainer letter is signed, they are also required to pay a retainer. Now, all lawyers do it differently. So some lawyers may not require a retainer, and some do. My experience, especially in the matrimonial world, is that most lawyers do work from a retainer. The amount of the retainer depends on the law firm that you hire. It depends on the complexities of your particular issue. So it's never the same. And that's something, again, that needs to be talked about with your lawyer, whoever you identify. Once the retainer letter and the retainer are paid, in order to start the action, something called a complaint has to be served on the other spouse. And a complaint is a very sort of vague document. It basically has some information about the date of your name, the date of the marriage, the names and birthdates of your children, and other sort of jurisdictional requirements. And then in the end, it says that the marriage is broken down irretrievably and you want a judgment of divorce, and you might want an order related to alimony and to custody. But typically, it's not very specific. You don't say, I want alimony of $500 a week. It just says that a party may want alimony, and the details are worked out as the case progresses. So I always tell clients it's nothing that's going to cause concern, because you're not making accusations within the complaint. I also tell my clients it's a good idea to tell your spouse that you've made a decision to do this. I don't always say that, because it depends on the particular situation. If a client is, has some safety issues and is concerned of the reaction of their spouse, then I might tell them to vacate the marital home and make sure they're in a safe space when the complaint is served on their spouse. But generally speaking, I tell my clients to tell their spouse, I've decided that getting divorced is best. We don't make each other happy any longer. This doesn't mean that I hate you. This doesn't mean this is going to be the war of the roses, but this is a decision that I've made. And hopefully we could get through this process with dignity, respect, grace, etc. Because they're still a family. They're just a different type of family. And if that conversation goes well, then the paperwork is typically served by a marshal, which is an individual who's not wearing a uniform. They don't have a hat, cowboy hat, or guns on their side. And the marshal, sometimes I'll even get the cell phone number of the spouse that's being served, and the marshal will call that spouse and say, look, I have some papers I need to serve. When's a convenient time? Do you want to meet at Dunkin' Donuts? You want to do that so that the person isn't really shaking in their boots.
And they do it at work and it's embarrassing, or something like that.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, if there are safety issues, then we might not be so transparent, or there's other sort of complexities. But generally speaking, if you can do that, then at least you've done what you can to be kind, civil, and respectful.
Melissa, and Wendy, I'll let you ask your question. I had one thing at the front end that people may not quite understand. I come from a family of attorneys, so I know what a conflict check is. But I assume, someone may come in, ask you the questions. I assume you probably don't have to go through a conflict check to have that initial consult. But if they do engage you or want to engage you, walk through the conflict check, when that takes place, and what it means in the event that you have to go back to someone and say, we can't represent you.
Yeah. So when you call my office, you will, before you are permitted to have a meeting with me,
okay,
a conflict check is run. So you won't speak to me initially. You'll speak to a paralegal, and they'll take some basic information from you. They'll ask you your name. They'll ask your spouse's name. They'll ask the date of the marriage, the names and ages of your children. They might ask you, generally speaking, what assets you have. They might generally ask, why are you calling? Some people are a little hesitant to share on that initial phone call, but the primary reason that the paralegals speak to clients before they schedule a meeting is that conflicts check. And typically what will happen is even while on the phone, we, have the computer software and they'll run a conflicts check. So if someone calls and there is a conflict, then we'll say, unfortunately, we can't speak to you, or something to that effect. So no one will get to sit down with me and have a meeting until a conflicts check is run and completed.
And that just means that, explain what that means if I can't speak to you because of why.
Yeah. So if I've received information from one spouse, even if I didn't end up representing them, then especially in the divorce world, it can be seen as a conflict, and it's logical, makes sense, right? If I've sat down with one spouse and they've told me their whole story and told me personal, private information about the marital relationship and their points of view about why the marriage has dissolved, I shouldn't then be able to speak to your spouse because I have the benefit of information, and it really wouldn't be fair. So
does it still happen that one or the other calls a handful of attorneys just to, I guess the saying is, to knock them off so you can't get to them? Does that still happen?
I think it happens with some particular lawyers who have a reputation of, sort of stirring the pot. So if that's their reputation, then someone might say, go and seek them. A lawyer I would never say that. But they might have a neighbor who said, oh, my husband was represented by Mr. Jones. You go see him to make sure that he won't represent your spouse. So I think it might happen a little bit. I don't really know.
Okay. Question. What if someone doesn't have access to funds or money? Say they just don't have the money, or they don't have access to their spouse's money, one way or the other. Then what happens? They come to you and they're basically like, I never had access to money. What do I do? And I want you to represent me.
Right. So I mean, every lawyer handles it differently. So I can speak for what I do and what we do here in this law firm. But I think it's a real disservice to take on a client who can't afford the fees. So depending on what's involved in the case, if I don't feel that a client can afford the fees in this law firm, then I will send them to someone whose fees might be more in line with the financial estate that we're talking about. But there are some occasions where, if there's a real dire situation, we might consider doing it at a discounted rate. If there is a client who doesn't have access to funds, then we might ask for a smaller retainer and then try to get the fees from the moneyed spouse. And that does happen quite a bit. So it's not that unusual.
What you had said earlier also about how you serve them, or how the complaint is served and how you start off. It's very important, from what I'm understanding, is setting the tone with your spouse from the very beginning. Then you kind of get a feel of how it's going to go, right?
That's very true. So you kind of know if you have a client come in here and say, I want to serve that person at work, I want them to be embarrassed. You try to step a client back from that, because it might feel good in the moment, but in the long run, it's just going to be, it's going to make things so much worse. And it's a difficult process, even in the best of situations. And I can promise you that type of divorce, where someone's angry and letting their emotions get the best of them, is going to cost more money.
And another thing that was so overwhelming to me was
Yep.
all the documents that you need. Oh, it's
Yeah.
just never ending. Can we go through the list of, I mean, it's from income to real estate to insurance to pensions to the cars, right?
Yeah.
And that
So
is that, Melissa, before you answer that question, while you're drafting the complaint, are you going back and kind of giving your client homework? Okay, I want you to start working on these things,
yeah,
or does that occur after the complaint?
yeah. Whenever, excuse me, someone hires one of the lawyers at Needle Cuda, we give the clients homework, and clients love it because they've made
It
the
gives them something
decision
to
to get.
do, right?
What'd you say?
It gives them something to do versus sit
Yeah.
there and be emotional and stress out and things like that, right?
Right. I mean, the reality is people usually think about it for a very long time, and then they finally made the decision and they're like, okay, now what do I do? And so we always give clients homework, and they do like having something to do. And the homework that we give clients is we tell them that at a minimum, you're going to have to produce certain documents. So you should start gathering and collecting those documents. They're not due the following day, they're not due the following week, but it takes time. As Wendy
Yes.
said, it is overwhelming the amount of, it's not even paper anymore, everything is done digitally. But the amount of information that has to be provided. So one of the first tasks that we give new clients is a list of documents that at a minimum you're going to have to produce. And generally speaking, I'm not going to read you the whole list, but generally speaking, it's a couple years worth of bank statements and a couple years worth of credit card statements, a couple years of tax returns, um, life insurance policies, retirement plans, pay stubs, anything that reflects what one's income is and what one's assets are. Because if you think about it, the other side is going to want confirmation of what that exists of. And your lawyer is going to want to make sure that whatever you're thinking your income and assets are is accurate. So the paperwork that supports that is critical. So one piece of homework that we give our clients is start thinking about, where is this stuff? What passwords do you need to access it? If you have an accountant, do you have the accountant's name and phone number to get the tax returns if you don't have them handy? Are you going to need someone to help you gather and collect these documents because you're not computer savvy and you don't know how to log on? So those are that's one aspect of homework that we give new clients, and it's really important. Do you want me to go on with the other pieces?
Basically, what
There's-
Do you have any
I'm
questions?
feeling
about that
overwhelmed
one?
already just remembering
Well-
getting all these documents. What if you don't have access to the documents? Like you're like left in the dark and one spouse runs all the bills and you don't even know where everything is.
Well, I mean, the beauty of that is your spouse is going to have to, is
Produce.
required to produce the same information. So I tell clients, if you can't get the documents, don't let it keep you up at night. We will figure out how
We'll
to
get
get
them eventually.
right. But that being said, if you could just spend some time thinking about how you're going to access at least some of the information, it's something for clients to do. And it does help the process move more quickly, more smoothly, and it can be less expensive if you can get that information to your lawyer as soon as possible.
Yeah,
If
it
you-
makes me think. It makes me. I'm in the accounting world. Is where I had my education, and basically, what you're doing is trying to paint a picture as of that current date. What does the financial statement of the marriage look like? What does the balance sheet look like? The assets and the liabilities, and then what kind of income is the marriage producing at that point in time? Because that starts the negotiation process and for you to clearly identify what the wants are, right?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, that's the concept behind it. And then there might be some complexities. You might say, well, I think that my spouse dissipated some of the Chase bank account and, wired it to his college roommate in anticipation of this
Oh
divorce.
God.
Or he's got a hidden apartment for his girlfriend in the city.
So, and he did that 3 years ago. So if that's the case, then we're going to need, proof of that. And so we're going to need some financial documents that go back further in time. So generally speaking, we want to have a snapshot of what the financial landscape of the family is at the beginning of the divorce and during the divorce process. And that brings me to the second piece of homework, which is the generation of a financial statement or a financial affidavit. And the courts require, when you get a divorce, for each spouse to submit, in Connecticut, we call it a financial affidavit. And a financial affidavit is a snapshot of a person's income, expenses, assets, and liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so the documents that you're producing help your lawyer to generate an accurate financial affidavit. And so one piece of homework is connected to another piece of homework. So
Right.
documents help you and help your lawyer generate the financial affidavit. Because you might say, yeah, I think I have a bank account with, $1,000 in it. And then you get the statement and you're like, oh, wow, it's really $3,200. You want to make sure that your financial affidavit is accurate because you sign under penalties of perjury that it is true and accurate. So you don't want to just guess. You don't want to just estimate. You want to make sure that it's as accurate as possible. And so that's another piece of homework that we give clients. We give them a worksheet that they need to fill out in terms of their income, expenses, assets, and liabilities. And that worksheet helps us generate a financial affidavit in the form that the court wants it presented. So that's a second piece of homework that everyone has to complete. And the reason behind the financial affidavit is that when you get divorced, the court or the judge who's going to approve the divorce, whether it's an agreement or whether you have a trial, the judge needs to know that whatever you've agreed to or whatever she or he orders is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. And without the benefit of knowing what the financial landscape of the family is,
Right.
they can't really make that determination. And so that's really the rationale behind a financial affidavit.
You got to support the ask, right? If someone comes in and says, I think I'm entitled to X dollars per month, and the financial statements don't support that, then how can the courts weigh in on that and say, yeah, you deserve that? I mean, you really have to be able to validate what incomes are coming in as well as what assets are coming in.
Absolutely.
That's right. If you just tuned in, we're talking about getting started with your attorney, our third of our 12-part series with attorney Melissa Needle, partner at the Westport, Connecticut-based law firm Needle Cuda. We're talking, this is mapping your new path forward because we're all going to have a new beginning. If you're getting divorced, if you're thinking about getting divorced, there is light on the other side. I think one thing we didn't talk about is, Melissa, I'm sure you give this advice after your partner is your husband or your wife is served. How do you communicate with them once that happens? Like, are there rules about that?
Well, it depends because there's such a wide variety of, facts and circumstances with divorcing couples. A lot lot of couples can continue to communicate. A lot of couples cannot, however.
Right.
And I always tell clients, be very careful. Make sure that you don't say anything negative or engage in any conflict in front of the children. And one of the most critical things is if you are communicating via email or text, you need to think that every email and every text that you write is going to be presented as evidence. So not only should the substance of the email be something that you stand behind, but the tone of the email as well. And so you need to be very careful with regard to communication if there is really some sort of conflict, and which is often the case, especially initially. And if the situation is really bad, then sometimes I tell my clients, don't engage. And if there's anything of importance that needs to be communicated, do it through lawyers.
Yeah.
So,
Because those texts and those emails can come back to haunt you.
yeah, they can come back to haunt you. Absolutely. And they will. And a lot of people also write emails knowing that they're going to be presented as evidence. And those too can come across as so disingenuous, so false, so prepared in anticipation of trial. So you really need to strike just the right tone in your emails.
Melissa, in the homework process, I assume that in some cases this is a very contentious process, particularly if it didn't start off on the right foot with your spouse.
Yep.
What rights do you have as an individual if someone's kind of sabotaging the process to pull that discovery? Are there court orders? Are there things that you can do as an attorney representing an individual to access the documents that they need just to even make that financial affidavit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if someone doesn't comply with the discovery process, then you need to get the judge involved and ask them to make orders with regard to the production of documents, with regard to depositions, with regard to experts, etc. So if someone is being non-cooperative or trying to be sneaky, let's say they give you, a year's worth of bank statement, but the most critical month is missing. Then you need to enlist the help of the judge to make orders to make sure that you have a full and complete understanding of what has occurred financially within the marriage. And it's not just financially. Another piece of homework that I give my clients is I ask them to write a marital history. Mm. And I do that because, clients can come into my office and they can spend an hour or two with me. But it's hard for them to really communicate the layers and flavors of what happened in the marriage. What attracted you to this person initially? What did you like about them? What are the good times? What happened? What's your educational background? What's your career history? What is your spouse going to say about the breakdown of the marriage? So I typically give my clients a marital prompt sheet, marital history prompt sheet, which says, from your perspective, what is your client going to say? There's all sorts of different questions. And I ask my clients to spend a lot of time with this document because it's very helpful to me to really understand what happened within the marriage and what happened with regard to the breakdown. It gives me such an advantage when I represent a client when they've written a really good, informative marital history, because I understand the nuances of what happened within the relationship. And if they write a good marital history, then that will lead also maybe to some other documents that we want. Maybe we want emails. Maybe we want photographs. Maybe we want police reports. I mean, everything is not simply financially related. And so I typically say for every year you've been married, the marital history should be a page long. So if you're married 7 years, give me a 7-page.
Wow. That kind of reminds. Sorry, Melissa,
That's
that
like a
kind of reminds me when I
dissertation
was.
for me, 22-page document.
Geez, mine's shorter. Mine's 9. But it reminds me of when I was a television producer, because when we would interview our guests, we would have to tell their story. We'd have to give it to the host to tell the story. So I would ask them, tell me your story. It's almost the same thing as
Right.
in a way.
And we help people along here at Needle Cuda by giving them this prompt.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking them, I don't want to be their psychologist.
Right.
The prompts that I'm asking them about are really based on the statutes. What is the court going to consider as important when trying to decide what's equitable? So a lot of the prompts that I'm giving my client relate back to our statute here in Connecticut with regard to issues such as alimony, child support, custody, etc. So it's not just, sort of a psychology session. Although I will tell you, many clients find it very daunting when I tell them they have to do this. But then afterwards, they say to me, oh, this was so cathartic. I'm so glad you told me to do this. There's so much more that I remembered. And they might even edit it as they go through the process and add to it. And it just is such a great tool for your divorce lawyer to have. This detailed information that you've really taken time to think about and to write.
And for you, it gives you a story to tell when you're up there with the judge. It gives you their background, like you're sharing their story, so it gives a more real feel to it too, more personal feel to it.
That's exactly right. And typically based on the statute. So that's what the judge wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
But from a human component, because the client is writing it, not the lawyer.
But that's the best part about you, Melissa, is because you do put a human component to it. And I think that helps the clients all the way through the process too. If only more people could be like that. I take away from this, this whole communication, this whole session that we've had today. And I feel like it's a session because it's a learning. The process is overwhelming. Anything you can do to stay organized with your paperwork, financial matters, legal documents, helps you move through the process so much more smoothly, puts you in control, and potentially saving many dollars and legal fees.
You summed it up very well, Wendy. You really did.
I feel like that's what I've learned. I mean, I wish I had more of a control when I was getting divorced, that I had put together all my paperwork, because I found it overwhelming because I never was in control of any of that. And I think that set my legal bills even higher because I didn't have that. So this is such important information.
Yeah, it really empowers the client to be able to know this either in advance of the process or at the beginning of the process. And it just makes the divorce run more smoothly.
And you do feel empowered. You feel in control once you have all this. I felt out of control because I didn't have a lot of my documents. Daniel, what about you?
I was just laughing because I'd be the type of person that come in with a 3-ring binder with everything already ready.
Of course you would.
Because I'm an accountant and I want to save dollars, so I'd have everything ready. But no, I mean, and I love the like almost writing the history of the marriage. I would envision that in some cases people might have second thoughts about, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Thinking about the marriage and some of the life events that occurred. But then also for you as an attorney, you don't want any surprises. That's your job, is to avoid the surprises.
Right.
And to get the discovery, like an inheritance that occurs, a major bonus, that comes in, some sort of asset that was brought into the marriage, before the marriage. All of those things you're able to identify just by someone writing a history of their marriage.
Yeah. And sometimes a client might not think something is important, and I'll read it in the marital history, and we can explore it further. And I will tell you, I usually get the opposite reaction to what you just described.
Really?
Usually when people write the marital history, they come in and they say, I cannot believe I waited this long.
That's a good point.
That I didn't act on it sooner. When it's written down in black and white and they've lived through these experiences, and it comes back to them, they recognize that they've made the right decision. That's the reaction I get more than, well, we had so many good times, maybe I shouldn't do
You're
this.
right. They probably saw the behavior. They start to see that the clues were many years, prior, and it's just all of a sudden continued to add up and add up.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Well, once again, mapping your new path forward. This was very, very, very helpful information, as all of our series that we do with you is so helpful. I wish every attorney was like you. I wish everyone had the blessing to have someone like you as their attorney if they're going through this process, because I feel it every time I talk to you. I feel it every time I talk to one of our guests that this is not easy, and it could be made easier if we have this information. So this is such a powerful community that we're building, Daniel. I really believe that.
These are my favorites.
I often say, you're not going to be happy with me because this divorce is a difficult process, but I want you to be satisfied.
Yeah.
And, we really try here to provide a service to our clients through such a difficult, stressful time. And so I appreciate your kind words, Wendy.
Oh no, it's all true from my heart. It's really true. I wish I say this every single time over and over. I wish I had this when I was going through my divorce. I wish I had this community. But now we have it. So we're helping other people. And
Good.
Maybe that's why we went through this, so we can help other people. Daniel, maybe that's why.
Absolutely. These are my favorites. So I'm looking forward to the next one. And we've got a great thing going here.
I know, Melissa, thank you so much for all this great information, for spending all this time with us and sharing all your wisdom.
Well,
and
thank
knowledge.
you to you, Wendy, and you, Daniel, for providing such a supportive, informative platform for people that are going through this.
We're looking forward to our next series coming up. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Needle Cuda Divorce and Family Law is an incredible resource for divorce and family law matters. Simply put, Needle Cuda is in the business of moving lives forward. Client reviews are everything, right? Well, listen to this. The American Institute of Family Law Attorneys named Needle Cuda their top 10 family law firm for client satisfaction for the past 4 years. That's huge. Managing partner, attorney Melissa Needle, has practiced family law for over 30 years. She has navigated hundreds of Connecticut clients through their personal divorce journey. Every story and experience is unique. Melissa shares her wisdom, learnings, and practical tips about divorce each month in our interview series called Mapping Your New Path Forward with attorney Melissa Needle. Melissa has built a reputation in Lower Fairfield County from Greenwich to Westport as an attorney who is forceful but fair. Her firm handles high net worth cases layered with contested custody and complex property division. We're so lucky to have her on Mapping Your New Path Forward with Melissa Needle. Tune in for Melissa's episodes and visit needlecuda.com. That's needle like the sewing needle, Cuda spelled Cuda.com, needlecuda.com.
Introducing the Planet Fitness Guide to getting that post-workout glow. Step 1. What's your why? More epic energy? Better sleep? Blow off steam? Step 2. Join Planet Fitness for $1 down, $10 a month, cancel anytime, and get moving. Go cardio crazy in our clean and spacious clubs, or get down with some dumbbells and strength equipment. Step 3. Bask in that post-workout glow. Join Planet Fitness today for $1 down, $10 a month, cancel anytime. Deal ends Friday, October 14th. It's glow time. See club for details.